I'm from an apartment in South Beverly Hills. Living room furniture covered in plastic, very sticky on dates. Trips across country to visit my Nana in Philadelphia. Eating too much as a kid. Spending lots of time at Aunt Minna's house, the whole family gathered around the TV with the magnified screen, watching the Ed Sullivan Show on Sunday nights. Enjoying her food, since my mother was a lousy cook. Always being involved with activities in school and the community.
I'm Joan DePriest. Billy and me watching life go by. From our third-floor dining room window on Chicago's South Side, my younger brother Billy and I watched life go by on 39th Street, and to some extent participated in it. One of our favorite things to do we called Yours Mine, which was alternating pretend ownership of whatever moved along in front of us. And in the mid-1940s, there were still horse-drawn wagons with people selling various foods and goods and calling out to what it was they were selling. Whoever got the rag man was rich because he always carried a big bag of pennies. And the watermelon man was another favorite. The sounds of horses' hooves clopping, they along the pavement slowly and rhythmically, as the vendors yelled out their offers, was both familiar and entertaining. Clop, 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 clop. The fish man always made us laugh, and we would sing along with him. I got a big fish, a little fish, swimming in the water. Give you a great big fish for a little bitty quarter. Fresh fish. So we laughed so much at ourselves and each other as we labored with our totally untrained 4- and 5-year-old voices to imitate these strong, nonchalant vendors who we could hear long before their wagons came into our view. Clop, 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 clop. A-E-O-A. I got your red ripe watermelon here. Watermelon man. Watermelon man, oh watermelon. And the rich rag man would buy old rags from you too. Rags are line, oh rags are line, with their horses clopping slowly in time. Clop, clop, clop. Oh, rags are line. Oh, after a while, Mother would say, y'all come and wash your face and hands now. Your daddy will be home soon. Good, because by now we were tired and hungry. I loved to smell what was for dinner. If we smelled cinnamons, it was going to be, oh, candied yams, or maybe sweet potato pie. So it was always ready at 4:30 because that's when Daddy came home. And if we smelled cinnamon, it was a good sweet potato pie or a candied yam day. And after dinner, Daddy always sat at the window, read his paper. Sometimes Mother would sit with him too after she packed his lunch. Our siblings taught us songs and things they learned from school. But, oh, happy day. Whenever Mr. Perry, straight across the street in that ice cream parlor, would come outside, look up on that third floor, raise his hand, and beckon like that for somebody to come over, he would send us a big carton of the best ice cream ever.
I'm from bricks and concrete and clickety-clack train noises, from baking smells of snickerdoodles, lemon cookies, and German chocolate cake. I'm from cheerleading, gym captains, exercising, track and field. I'm from walking to piano lessons, the military polonaise, the minute waltz, and Fur Elise. And my mother playing the piano and singing. I'm from boiled starch and ironing boards and wringer washing machines. I'm from forbidden streets, forbidden playmates, and forbidden playgrounds and fear. I'm from loving parents, protecting parents, encouraging parents, and hope.
I'm Richard HIRSCH, and this is Clowning Around with apologies to the Joker. The door opened, and there stood my wife, Claire, holding our 2-year-old daughter, Nicole. I said hi, and Nicole let out a shriek and started crying. She was terrified that my voice was coming from a clown face. I rubbed a little makeup off on my finger and showed her it was only Daddy. Yes, Daddy was a birthday clown for nearly a decade. It all started when I was 12. My neighbor up the street, Dick, and I used to collect hand puppets and perform shows. They were mostly from kids' TV shows like Howdy Doody and Time for Beanie. One day we were talking, and I said, let's do a puppet show for charity. He agreed, and we finally settled on the Damon Runyon Cancer Fund. It was touted by a provocative radio journalist named Walter Winchell, who started his program every week with a beeping teletype and the greeting, "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea." My great-uncle was the comedian Ed Wynn. He had lots of scripts in his home. We looked through his stash and decided to write puppet shows based on fairy tales like Cinderella and Little Red Riding Hood. We livened them up with jokes. The Prince in Cinderella was from the Kingdom of Finger and was known as the Finger Prince. The show was going to take place in Dick's backyard. We turned a ping pong table on its side, mounted a flimsy stage on top with pull curtains. We sold a lot of tickets in the neighborhood for a few bucks each and made several $100s for the Cancer Fund. Well, the clown thing came about when one of the neighbors asked us to do her son's birthday party. We agreed on the huge sum of $10. Dick and I discussed how to beef up our act. How about dressing as clowns, he suggested. A great idea, I said. In fact, my uncle had performed in a Broadway show where he dressed as a court jester. I'll see if he'll let me wear his old costume. Dick decided to ask his mother to make him a clown suit. He found a derby hat, put a smokestack on the side, and named himself Choo Choo. I went with a straw boater and became Jojo. The party was a great success and led to many more. We expanded our repertoire to include serving the birthday cake, helping to open the presents, and magic tricks. A family friend loaned us some professional stage tricks that he had used to perform before he turned himself into a private detective. Our closing trick was a guillotine. It stood about 4 feet tall, had a hole in the middle, and a nasty blade protruding from the bottom. One of us would take a carrot. We'd lift the blade and chop the carrot in half. Then we'd invite the birthday child up to put his or her little head in the hole. We'd place a basket in front to catch the head. And then we'd ask the kids if it was okay to drop it. And we would do so to the screams of the kids and usually the parents. Of course, the trick was harmless and no loss of life occurred. This was very important since we didn't get paid until the end of the party. Years later, a parent approached us and said he was the producer of a daytime TV show that took place at a big motel in Hollywood. He asked, "Can you guys do a puppet show every few weeks on the show? You just can't use puppets that are on other TV shows," which most of ours were. We signed up and disguised many of them with wigs, sideburns, mustaches, sombreros, etc., so they wouldn't be recognized. JoJo and Choo Choo lasted into our college years. From time to time, the old clown techniques came in handy in my chosen career as a trial lawyer.
I am from Jump Ropes, SOS, and Old Cedar Furniture Polish. I'm from Thanksgiving Dinner and Live and Let Live, from Get Your Education, and it's not what's on your head, it's what's in your heart. From the lynching of my father's father, 1935, Alabama. No unions here, Mr. Upstart. Quit that union activity or die. Papa Ed sent word back. I've come too far to turn around now. He had his chance. Posse galloped to his farm, called out his name, "Ed Bracy, this is your time to die." I'm from a sepia-toned 8x10 photograph of Papa Ed, always set quietly atop the chest of drawers where Daddy could see it from his bed.
Hi, my name is SIDONIE, and I'll be reading Secrets from the Soul. My big girl bike has training wheels. It's blue and white with big wheels. Daddy put blocks on the pedals so I could reach them. I'm sitting on my Schwinn bike with a button for the horn in the horn box in the front. It has batteries to make it work. Beep, beep, beep. I have streamers on the handlebars. I love to watch them flutter in the wind. My bike is beautiful. I like to ride it, but now I'm just sitting, watching Mr. Patton get ready to wash his car. He and my friend Pat and Pat's mommy live on the second floor of the apartment building where my daddy is the custodian. We live in the basement. We live in Little Italy on Murray Hill in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm afraid of the Murray Hill gang. They're scary. They say they'll beat up me and my brother if they find us. Mr. Patton has been in the Army, Mama says. He has really short hair. It's blonde. He has muscles. You can really see them on his arms as he places the bucket and the hose on the ground next to the car. It's sunny today, and you can see the sun shining on those silver bumpers. I feel the sun on my face as I lift my chin up to look at the sky. I close my eyes. The sun feels warm on my face. It feels so good. "Hi there," he called out. I dropped my head. I don't like to talk to people. They scare me. Finally, I answer quietly, "Hi, Mr. Patton." I don't know what else to say. "Good-looking bike you have there," he said. "Thank you." I look up and smile, and then I drop my head. I don't want to look at him. "I got it for Christmas," I finally say. Mr. Patton took the hose and rinsed off the back of the car. He looked at me and smiled and said, "Santa was very good to you." "Yes," I whisper. I'm shy. I don't like to talk to people. I push off and pedal down the sidewalk next to the apartment building where we live. I pedal so fast I can feel the wind in my face. I feel like I'm flying. At the end of the sidewalk, I stop at the fence. Did you know to stop my bike you have to pedal backwards? Sometimes the brakes squeak, but not this time. If I go past the fence, people might call me names and throw rocks at me. One time, a man in a passing car spit on me while I was standing on the sidewalk. Ugh. I felt horrible. I didn't tell anyone. I just wiped my face off with my top and came home. I look around. I don't see anybody. I get off my bike and turn it around. I climb back on and slowly pedal to the end of the yard where Mr. Patton is still washing his car. "Pat'll be down in a minute." "Oh, okay," I say. Pat is allowed to play with me, and sometimes we play together. He's a year older than me. We have fun together. Maybe he will get his bike out too.
I'm from a beautiful place, from Lipton tea and Lone Star beer. I'm from ocean waves and palm trees, from oleander trees, big strong trees that protect you from the sun. I'm from family reunions and very tall men. I'm from Cartier McNulty and Joseph Small, from the tough side of town and the fun side of town, from love your neighbors and stand up and fight. I'm from the universe and the Episcopal Church. I'm from Galveston Island and Vietnam. I'm from fried chicken and oxtail stew. I'm from Buster's Pool Hall and Sonny's Barbecue, both owned and operated by my big brother, Billy Barker. He was the best.
I'm AVIYAH FARKAS. I'm reading Brick Factory Escape. This is the true story of my father's escape from deportation to Auschwitz. Kalman Gutlon was startled awake before dawn by incessant pounding on the apartment door. He had briefly lowered his constant, guarded, half-awake sleep before the pounding began, when he allowed himself to sink into the softness of his wife's body. His beautiful wife, Anna, who he hadn't slept next to for the past 3.5 years. Last night, when he secretly entered the apartment building, he couldn't imagine his luck to be home again. Now fully awake, Kalman leapt to his feet and opened the door to find a fierce, arrow-crossed militant pointing a gun at him. Get out, you filthy Jew! Go, now, quickly! Kalman's wife, who was not Jewish, began to protest. He's my husband. You can't take him. The militant spat. Shut up, you witch, else you'll come too. With no choice but to obey, Kalman joined hundreds of other Jews who'd been picked up in the early morning raids. They were marched to the brick factory on the Buddha side of the city, about 5 miles away. There they joined thousands of Jewish men, women, and children, families, the very old and young, sitting, standing, miserable, waiting in the frigid rain and ankle-deep mud. They were held at gunpoint by Hungarian guards wielding clubs and bayonet-tipped rifles. Upon entering this hell, Kalman knew without a doubt that he would escape, just as he'd escaped from his forced labor battalion 3 weeks ago. This was November 1944, and the Budapest Jews were gathered to begin forced marches to Auschwitz. Kalman went about making himself invisible, watching and waiting for his instincts to tell him when to act. Several women, some holding infants, waved baptismal certificates and shouted, I'm a Christian, I don't belong here, let me out. Immediately, they and their children were all shot. There was sheer chaos. People were shouting, pleading. They were pushed, shoved into makeshift huts. Others were forced to line up and were told to march out the large front gates. The heavy rain made the chaos worse. Kalman knew he had to make a move. He'd been closely watching the guards and decided to approach a benevolent-looking older guard who was standing off to the side. He went up to him, showed his yellow forced labor armband, and boldly lied. I've been separated from my labor battalion, the 10936. Can you help me get back to them? For a moment, the guard just looked at Kalman, showing no reaction. Kalman wasn't at all sure he'd heard. The rain was pounding. Then suddenly the guard took his rifle from his shoulder, placed his bayonet on the rifle's end, and shoved it into Kalman's back. March, march out, he said. The next thing, Kalman knew he'd been marched out of hell onto the adjoining street. They walked a ways in silence, the guard still behind Kalman. Soon enough, they were side by side, and Kalman knew his lie had been heard and his life had been saved. They found a nearby tavern. Kalman paid for a round of drinks, gave this gentle older guard all his remaining money. They shook hands and parted. The guard went back to his duty, happy for the respite out of the rain and the warmth of strong Schlivovitz. Looking out for arrow-crossed terrorists, Kalman got to the safety of the Swiss legation and temporary freedom.
I am from a city upbringing, public schools and public transportation. I am from the House of Music, practicing singing Joyous. I am from the park across the street, lovely in daylight, dangerous at night. Snow forts and snowball fights in winter, picnics in summer. I'm from eating and laughing, from Mother Charlotte and Father Will. I'm from the entertainers and the entertained, from the insistence on excellence and the expectations of success. I'm from Boston Jewish, semi-observant, mostly secular. I'm from Boston and Russia and Austria. Chinese food out, overcooked meals in. From the Zeta Pesach, who lived to 113 in Ukraine many generations ago, and the grandmother Celia, who died too young at 52. I'm from a family tree gleaned from the computer and my parents' myriad photo albums. There's no one left who can validate.
Hi, I'm Tyrone Small, and this is Then Came the Rains. Galveston Island is a beautiful place in the middle of Gulf of Mexico, with its palm trees, ocean view, seagulls, and fruit trees. During a hurricane, the wind and rain is a monster. It tosses houses, trains, and cars like toys. The roaring sounds coming from your house sound like 100 freight trains. After the storm, that would be calm, and all those beautiful fruit lying on the ground. Me and my 3 buddies, Poochie, Scoopy, and Dirty Red. We called him Dirty Red because he was light-skinned and never washed his face. All of us were between 10 and 12 years old. Scoopy was the first one to get the guys together and ready for our fruit raid, and now was the time to make our move on the fruit trees. All over the island, plums, peaches, pecans, and figs. Ugh, I hate figs. The problem was the fruit was in our neighbors' backyards, so we had to wait until nightfall to make our raid. I'm going for the plums first. Even the crunchy green ones are good with a little salt. Eating too many green plums can really make your stomach hurt real bad the next day. An upset stomach was a signal for my mom to make a move. I really, really love my mom. She was beautiful, with her coal black hair hanging almost down to her waist, deep dimples, and a gleaming smile. My dad said she had a nice set of tatas, too. Whenever he said that, everybody in the house would just laugh their heads off. Not me. What in the hell is a tata? I looked around the house for tatas, but I never found them. I didn't find out what that was until much later when Shirley Francis showed me hers. I wasn't impressed. But right now, Mom looked like Satan, coming at me with a frown on her face and a tablespoon of castor oil in one hand and a slice of lemon in the other. Boy, how many times have I told you not to eat green plums and that they would make you sick? You're going to drive me to drink. Here, take this, and you better not cry, and you better not spit it out, and then suck on this orange slice. Castor oil was made by the devil. It tastes like thick, slimy, used motor oil. And the next morning, you run into the toilet all morning, if you can make it on time. I love plums. After the plums, we would hit the backyards for apples, oranges, and pecans. It had been a good night. I had almost a half a pillowcase of plums, some red, some yellow, and a lot of green ones. Dirty Red had more than everybody. Scoopy wanted to raid Mrs. Schwartz's trees before calling it a night. But there were a few white people on the west side of town who didn't want 4 little black boys in their backyards picking up plums off the ground in the middle of the night. They would rather see the fruit lie on the ground and rot in the hot island sun but not Mrs. Swartz. Mrs. Swartz was very rich. Her family owned Star Drugstore, Ibanez Clothing Store, 2 high-time restaurants, and most of the rat-infested rundown housing in the black community. Swartz Realty Company was the #1 slumlord on the island. A lot of people worked for the Swartzes as maids, butlers, cooks, mechanics, nursemaids, and chauffeurs. She also knew that after the hurricane, the kids would come out for the fruit. She had installed little tiny silver bells on a long cord all the way across her back fence up to her upstairs bedroom to alert her when we climbed over the back fence. For the first 20 minutes or so, she just looked at us through her binoculars and watched us gather up the plums. After a while, she would see our bags were nearly full and most of the fruit was off the ground. She would pick that old 12-gauge double-barrel shotgun up, point it out the window into the sky, and let go with both rounds. Boom, boom. That was our signal to vacate the premises and get the hell out of the backyard. We tossed those bags of fruit over the back fence and ran like hell. Poochie would just walk around the front of the house and calmly walk out with his bags. Why in the hell didn't I think of that? What the hell, I'm just 10 years old, I can't think of everything. Mrs. Swartz firing off that old shotgun served 2 purposes. #1, she always waited until we got most of the fruit off the ground that she really didn't mind us having in the first place. And #2, it allowed her to pacify her racist white neighbors that she did not condone little darkies in her backyard stealing fruit. She also donated a lot of money, food and clothing to the black churches and money to the NAACP. Hurricanes are monsters. They destroy everything in their path. Even after they're gone, there's still grief and sadness. During a lull in one storm, my Uncle Richard went to his car, raised his hood to see what damage the storm waters had done to his motor. But as he raised his hood, 2 rattlesnakes jumped out and bit him on the neck. He died the next day because no emergency vehicles could get through the flood waters and all the bridges were washed out. Poor Uncle Richard. Poochie still have nightmares about the enormous, ugly hurricane that came through town a couple of years ago. It destroyed his uncle's house and killed all his chickens. The next time, that will let you know, the first thing that would let you know that the storm had passed were the birds, hundreds of them. You could hear them chirping, and you could see them flying to the nest. When the doors of the auditorium where we stayed open, only then could you see the devastation the storms had left. Dead animals lying in the street, houses totally demolished, whole neighborhoods gone, power lines down, filthy floodwater everywhere. The oak trees were gone too. They found Raymond Charles, his wife, 2 kids, 2 days later, still tied to oak trees, face down in muddy bayou water. They didn't make it. Poor Richard. I don't want any more plums.
I'm from hot New York City pavement with Kanish and ISIS carts, with blast open fire hydrants gushing blessed cold water. I'm from Henry Street, Hester, Essex, and Delancey Streets, the Jewish Forward building around the corner next to the Jewish bakery and stamped rye bread, basement synagogues on every block, the Rabbi Jacob Joseph Yeshiva on mine. I'm from breakfast of instant coffee, milk, lots of sugar, and 2 Gus's pickles fished out of their barrels of brine while walking to school. I'm from roller skating to the UN, ice skating in Central Park, museums and opera, sitting on my fire escape, reading and eating sunflower seeds. I'm from parents who survived the war, only to create one at home. A mother who beat my father bloody in my presence. The threat of men who exposed themselves to little girls and packs of boys who attacked them on the subway.
I'm Judy KESSLER, and this is They Wanted Me to Go to Rehab, but I said no, no, no. After very successful emergency surgery on my right foot and about a week's healing and intravenous antibiotics, my hospital couldn't wait to get rid of me, mostly because I didn't need much medical care, and insurance doesn't pay for recuperation in a hospital, but I still couldn't walk. I was given a choice of being transferred to one of two local rehab facilities. Only one of them had an opening, some choice. However, it was close to my home and to my support system, which consists of my sister Lynn and our good friend Jane. The rehab brochure claimed it was air-conditioned, had excellent PT, plus HBO and Showtime. So I said, okay. After a short ambulance ride, there I was in a place that turned out to be 50% skilled nursing facility, permanent residents, and 50% rehab, people healing from illness, injury, or surgery, like me. My first impression was that it appeared chaotic and was incredibly noisy. I had just spent a week in a private room with a door that closed at the hospital. They assigned me to a room with someone else, so I offered to pay the difference to transfer to a private room. Guess what? They didn't have any private rooms. I will say that this rehab is probably as good as any I could have found with no advance notice. It didn't smell. The PT was not the worst I've ever seen, although I wouldn't call it excellent. And the food was, surprisingly, good. There was an LA Times delivered to me each day. On the first night, they held a dinner party for any residents who wanted to attend, so I went. It reminded me of an 8th grade dance. The men sat at tables by themselves. Most of them fell asleep during dinner. I found it sad that only about 35 of the 100 residents chose to attend. I absolutely won the roommate lottery since she was clean, minded her own business, and had all her marbles. Unfortunately, she was there first, so had claimed ownership of the room. She was deaf as a haddock, but didn't wear hearing aids, left both her TV and her lights on all night, and snored. She also kept telling the staff to turn the air conditioning off. Sleep eluded me. My biggest goal was to learn how to get around on one foot and get home. Incidentally, if you can't put any weight on one foot, the only way to ambulate is to hop. I hopped. The TV was bizarre. It was small, square, and was mounted on a swivel arm over each bed, right out of the 70s. My bed was narrow, lined in plastic, and had a sheet and blanket which appeared to be made of large grit sandpaper. There was no place to sit except on my bed. I was always too hot, both because of the plastic liner on the bed and because my roommate wanted the air conditioning off. While I was healing, my brain went into low power mode. I couldn't concentrate on anything much more intellectual than the Great British Baking Show and Say Yes to the Dress, which I watched on my phone via Netflix. It turns out that kids are not crazy. Watching programs on your phone is okay. I couldn't find HBO or Showtime on the TV's channel guide, so one day I called the activities director and asked him. It turned out that Showtime Rehab wasn't the Showtime I was used to. Apparently, Showtime comes in flavors, such as family-friendly and all sports. Showtime at the rehab was called Showtime Extreme, which specializes in violence, war, and science fiction movies. Not really my taste. Late one night, when my roommate's nighttime habits were especially vexing, I decided to try to watch Showtime. Guess what Showtime Extreme shows at night? Porn. That's right. Violence during the day and porn at night. Did the rehab administration know and not care? Had they ever received a complaint from a resident? Did the residents know and decide to keep their mouths shut? I'll never know, since after 10 days, after successfully negotiating stairs and proving I could hop 200 feet, after threatening to leave against medical advice, I happily went home.
I'm Adrienne Omansky, and this is my story, The Beautiful Swimming Pool. My mother, Celia, was in St. Vincent's Hospital in Los Angeles in 1960. She spent several months there due to her injuries from an automobile accident. Over a short period of time, her condition worsened. She became very weak and developed pneumonia. One day, she spoke to my father very slowly. She was losing her voice. Her words could barely be heard. "Mike, I heard from the doctor today that there is a hospital in Downey called Rancho Los Amigos. She thought I should go there. It has a beautiful swimming pool." My father said lovingly but firmly, "Seal, you're not going there. Rancho Los Amigos is a polio hospital, and you do not have polio. You're going to come home to your family, maybe for your June 30th birthday." June 30th came and went, and she didn't come home to us. Our family consisted of my older brother, Irv, who was 22, my younger brother, Bob, 8, and myself, 12. Both Bob and I were also in the accident that disabled our mother, but we were well enough to be released from the hospital after a few weeks. Mom progressively got worse. She couldn't breathe on her own, and in order to save her life, she was transferred out of St. Vincent's Hospital to Rancho Los Amigos and placed in an iron lung. The iron lung was the predecessor to the ventilator of today. It was primarily used to help polio patients to breathe, but also used to help others. Every Sunday, our dad took us in his green Plymouth station wagon to Downey to see her. It took us about an hour to get to the hospital. Walking down the long hallway to our mother's room, we saw people of all ages in wheelchairs and in beds. This day, when we passed the swimming pool, the nurses were lowering a young girl into the water. It looked like she was anchored to a swing. The girl must have been 8 or 9. There was a strange odor coming from the pool that smelled like rotten eggs. Later, I found out that the smell was sulfur in the pool and it was used for rehabilitation. When we entered our mom's room, Bob held onto my hand tightly as we passed several coffin-like cylinders. These were the iron lungs. We could hear the machines working, and except for that sound of the machines breathing, in and out, it was silent. Mom's machine was to the left of the room. We could see her face in the mirror that was above her. She saw us and attempted to smile. As we approached her, she spoke to us in a whisper, "Hi." Our visit was brief, and when we left Mom's room, our dad got us an orange crushed soda from the soda machine. I remember the sweetness. I drank it very fast. I was happy to see my mom, but both my brother and I were traumatized by this and couldn't wait to leave the hospital. We never saw our mom in the iron lung again. In the next few weeks, she was able to breathe on her own and was slowly taken out of the machine for longer periods of time each day. She patterned her breathing after the rhythm of the iron lung that she was so accustomed to. In and out, in and out. When she came home to us, It had been 9 months since our car accident. She was 47. For many years, we went back to Rancho with my mom to visit patients there. We brought them chocolate bars and cigarettes. During one of our last visits, I noticed everything looked the same, even the beautiful pool. But what was missing were the cylinder-shaped iron lungs. At age 70, Celia finally fulfilled her dream and became an actor in commercials, television, and films. She lived to age 91.
I'm from Weeping Willow Trees. I'm from Dorothy and Clayton, but not Toto. I'm from Kansas oil fields, wandering hobos, and the big tents. I'm from God-fearing people who thought we were all born sinners. I'm from a family of railroaders and a family of dispatchers. I'm from the 4 women who lived 50,000 years ago, who mothered all the Ashkenazi Jews who are now living on the planet. I'm from a family of Romanian gypsies.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joyce Holmes, and I am the author of my story, Growing Up a Senior. Uh-oh, girls. Here comes Mama, Lainey. Okay, girls, it's time to turn out the lights, go to bed, and say your prayers. At the age of 6 years old, I can clearly remember my mother entering our bedroom and telling me to put my book away and pray. I immediately muttered my prayer so that she could faintly hear me. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. And Lord, Lord, please remember, I don't want to be a senior. In the late 1800s, my grandparents, forefathers, had established roots in North Carolina for our next generation of families, which included my great-great-grandfather of mixed origin and my great-great-grandmother, who was white. Originally, they were slave owners of different colors of people called mulattoes. Our family was very mixed, and we got along well with each other. We never struggled for food or fun, mainly because of their own personal inheritance and their ancestors' inheritance as well. Our family lived very well off. Before the time of the Great Depression, in the early 1930s, my grandparents, along with their 6 children, which included my mother, her 3 brothers, and her 2 sisters, relocated to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My grandfather was a brick mason and a businessman. My grandmother was a nurse and a very caring, soft-spoken person. They invested into a 4-story house for all the family to live in, and a second building next to the main house to operate a boarding house for seniors, males and females. At the beginning of the Civil Rights era and in between the post-war World War II economic prosperity area, my parents gave birth to 6 children also. For a long time, we all lived together in the 4-story big house with my grandparents. It was summertime during the first few months of living with my grandparents and watching them prepare the boarding home for the seniors. Once it was ready, I spent a lot of time in and out of the boarding home, reading, playing games, coloring, and showing the ladies how to make miniature doll clothes and matchbook doll beds. I loved entertaining the seniors while my father was at work and my mother was busy helping to take care of both houses with my grandmother. During that time, We only had a radio to listen to. There were no TVs. But I did enjoy turning on the music and getting those seniors up to dance. Then I would imitate them on the dance floor to make them laugh. I felt bad that they didn't have family members to house them or to have fun with like my family did. Hardly any of their relatives would come on a regular basis to visit them. However, I started to notice different things about the seniors, like how the seniors were basically on their own to take care of themselves, along with the service my grandmother provided. Meanwhile, I learned something different every day from watching them and their actions. It was so strange. Some things really troubled me. The first thing I noticed that caught my attention were their dressing habits. The men and the women would wear the same clothing for a couple days straight. Maybe it was because clothes were washed by hand during those times, and seniors couldn't seem to bend over to wash them. In the small short bins that were set out in the backyard area, they demonstrated that they couldn't do it when they tried. Sometimes I noticed there were unpleasant smells that came from their clothes and out of certain bedrooms. I wondered if someone wet the bed by accident. Also, there were some women who chewed dip snuff, eventually spitting it out in an old coffee tin can in a corner, and the men would chew tobacco and spit in the same can too. It was real ugly, dark looking. Whatever came out of their mouths did not look right. Maybe that is why several of them had yellow-looking teeth. In addition, some had false teeth. One time I discovered false teeth lying on the side of a coffee saucer, but I dared not to ask who they belonged to. That would have been disrespectful for someone my age. No matter what, I did enjoy serving the seniors. It was like playing a waitress job, and they would give me little treats in return. The seniors' physical conditions was another concern for me. Some had trouble walking up and down steps, using canes to support themselves. It didn't seem normal. I noticed at times some were forgetful, and some seemed to be quiet and sad. Lastly, some seniors wore dark sunglasses, which was scary looking to me. Little did I know that they had weak eyes or diseased eyes and could not tolerate the sun's rays, especially when they sat in the backyard in the summertime. As much as I enjoyed being in my grandmother's boarding home, I decided I did not want to be a senior. But I did love to entertain them and teach them kiddie things that I like to do. Even the thought of growing up a senior just did not make sense to me. I wanted to always be able to dance, walk without assistance, have real white teeth, good vision, and an active and creative mind with no sadness from loneliness. Regardless of my prayer wish never to become a senior, mainly because of what I witnessed as a child, I am now in the senior category, living a good, healthy life, transformed from generation to generation in a more advanced civilization and active lifestyle. I was glad I grew up and never had to face the realities of the past. Presently, I am now educating seniors everywhere I go, teaching them how to survive a happy life, entertaining themselves among each other, and entertaining themselves even if they're by themselves. By visiting senior centers and the like, I encourage the seniors to participate, to get out and about. As life changes from moment to moment in this modern day world, we must We absolutely must help each other, especially our senior people. Now that I have accepted being a senior, I know it is a privilege denied to many and a blessing from God. Thank you, Lord.
I am from a middle-class home on Westbourne Drive in Los Angeles, on a street where there are lots of children, comfortable, busy, loud. I'm from plum and lemon trees. I'm from Yiddish words. I'm from banana cake, latkes, and burnt roast. I'm from dance lessons and a stage mother. I am from Adrienne. You will go to UCLA, from my dad.
Hi, I'm Sherry McCoy, and this is Borrowed Marbles. Susie was my friend in first grade. She had blonde hair, but her older brother Donnie, who was in the 5th grade, had brown hair like me. Donnie wasn't very nice to Susie, but one day he surprised her and gave her a couple of his favorite marbles. "How come Donnie gave you his marbles? Is it your birthday?" I asked. "No, silly," Susie said. "I was born on Christmas Day." "Wow," I said. "My little sister Donna was born on Easter Sunday." Just then, Miss Marple, our teacher, rang a little bell. Ding-a-ling-a-ling. "Okay, children, it's lunchtime. Put your May baskets on your desks and put away the crayons and art supplies in the bins. And remember, walk, don't run." Later that day, when Susie and I were on the playground for the afternoon play period, she surprised me with a gift. "You can play with these marbles for a while if you want to, Sherry," Susie said, and plopped the 2 marbles Donnie had given her in my hand. One was red and the other was purple. "Really?" "Yeah," she said, "but don't lose them." "Oh, I won't. I'll hang on to them really tight." We ran across the playground and headed over to the jungle gym to do somersaults. When we got to the jungle gym, I realized I didn't have any pockets in my blue sundress that Mom had made for me. Where would I put the marbles? I had to make sure they didn't get lost. So I decided to put them in my mouth. Susie was already up high on the jungle gym and starting to do somersaults when I caught up with her. Okay, now it's my turn, I thought, as I rolled over the bar to do a somersault. But when I finished the turn and came back upright, the red and purple marbles were no longer in my mouth. They had rolled down into my throat. They were stuck, and I couldn't breathe. I tried to swallow, but the marbles wouldn't go down. And they wouldn't come back up either. Suddenly, things got very quiet and still. That's when I heard the angel's voice. It was a male voice, a very clear, firm, and loving voice. It was a voice I always trusted. "Do another somersault," the angel said. Immediately, I bent over the bar and began another somersault. When I was upside down, the marbles rolled out of my throat into my mouth. Carefully, I took the marbles out of my mouth, righted myself, and climbed down off the jungle gym. I ran as fast as I could to the drinking fountain and rinsed off the marbles. Then I ran back to Susie, who was still busy doing somersaults on the jungle gym. "Susie," I shouted, "you can have your marbles back." Susie climbed down to where I was. "Thanks," I said, as I put the wet marbles in her outstretched hand. The school bell rang a few minutes later, and we all ran inside to lie down on our mats and take a nap. But I couldn't go to sleep. All I could think about was that I never wanted to borrow anybody's marbles ever again.
I am from a traveling family from the southern states. I am from the city of brotherly love, from trains to planes. I am from the warm belly of my mother, from love to happiness. I am from holiday celebrations of giving and caring, from Daddy Homer and Mama Lane. I am from the Catholic Church and a Latin choir, from worship and prayer and thankfulness.
I am from Yele Vacuum Cleaner with Contact C1 Power Line. I am from Tilex Mold and Mildew Stain Remover with bleach. I am from beautiful navy blue sofas in the living room. I am from majestic white orchids on the kitchen table. I am from family photos and mementos located in the guest room underneath the sofa bed.
Hi, I'm Antoinette, and I'm going to read my piece called Bernice. Well, I was 2 years old when Mom and Daddy sent us young'uns to live with Granny Ellen May on a farm in Mississippi. Well, Granny Ellen May was a big-boned woman, and she chawed tobacco and spit the tobacco juices right out the side of her mouth. And Granny was a Southern Baptist, and she read us young'uns a book called the Bible, but it didn't have no pictures or nothing. And Granny Ella kind of scared the bejesus out of me, 'cause one day she told me I was going to burn in hell if I didn't quit sassing her. So I kind of stopped talking much after that, 'cause I didn't want to make Granny Ella May or Jesus mad at me. When I was 5, our family reunited in Lawrence Park, Pennsylvania, and we was together again. Yes, we was a family, a real family. And after a while, things settled in, and I got to see Mama most every day. Well, I recall one day Mama was fixing to work the lunch counter at the diner, and she put on a pot of beans and says to me, "Bernice, will you be Mama's little helper and stir these beans so they don't stick to the pot and burn?" "Yes, Mama." Well, after Mama left, a voice inside my head said to me, "Bernice, them beans gotta boil some till they need stirring." So I took off running barefoot across the cement highway into the meadow across the way, and the first thing I done's lay me down them wildflowers. And the hot sun's beating down on my skin, and the wind was playing with my hair. Well, I didn't even mind the blisters burning up my feet. And above me was a blue sky with white clouds, and they changed shape right before my eyes. And my mind took me up into them floating clouds, up so high, I thought I'd be sucked in and they'd carry me away, and that scared me. 'Cause if they did, I'd miss my mama, something awful, just something awful. Well, I was lollygagging in the meadow for a while when I remembered I was supposed to stir them beans for Mama. Well, I jumped up quicker than a snake in a gopher hole, and I run home so fast, I thought my heart's gonna bust. Well, I flung open the screen door, and there's Mama. Her eyes is all swollen, and tears was running down her cheeks. And Daddy was so red-faced and fussing at Mama, I thought his head just might explode. And Daddy was a-pointing to the burned pot he flung clear across the floor, the kitchen floor. Well, there was beans everywhere. The beans on the floor, beans on the walls, beans on Mama's white uniform. And I hollered out, I'm sorry, Daddy. I supposed to stir them beans for Mama. It's my fault them beans burned. I'm sorry, Mama. Please don't cry. Please don't cry. Well, just then Daddy grabbed me by the collar of the dress, of my dress, and he flung me like he'd done them beans. Well, I slipped, hit my head on something hard, and busted open the skin right here above my eye, and blood squirted out. Well, Mama, she screamed like a wild banshee. And just then the old widow Jones from next door, she come running in and put her arms around Mama's belly and started patting Daddy on the arm. And she was talking real pretty words, and the fussing quieted down some. Well, I was standing there by myself when my mom says to me, Bernice, Mom and Daddy gonna send you back to Granny Ella Mae, Mississippi. And Granny Ella Mae's gonna tell Jesus about them beans. And you gonna burn in hell. You gonna burn in hell. And, well, you ain't never gonna see Mama again.
I am from counties rich and poor, people intelligent and not so much. I'm from muscle cars and VW bugs, open highways and narrow roads. I'm from families who love and take care of each other. I'm from geographically segregated beginnings turned into black and white culture. I'm from a love of innocence.
I'm Patricia, and this is Mother's Warning, based on a true story. When I first met her, I was a college student working as a summer intern in Montreal for a large international corporation. I was creating a slideshow presentation for the company. Her name was Josephine, but everyone called her GP. She was the daughter of the CEO in London, and I was introduced to her by my boss, Peter Ryan. She and I immediately hit it off, so I invited her to dinner that night at my house. At dinner, my mother asked her what she did in London, and GP said that she was a film editor. She also mentioned that she was looking for work here in that field. I told her that my boyfriend, Paul, was a filmmaker, and I could arrange for her to meet him. Maybe he'd know of someone looking for a film editor. At that moment, I noticed my mother's eyes light up like saucers. And after dinner, when GP was gone, my mother said to me emphatically, "Do not introduce that girl to Paul, Charlotte. She'll steal your job, your boyfriend, your life." I heard my mother's warnings, but I didn't listen. I liked GP, and I thought we were friends, so I arranged for her to meet my boyfriend that week. A couple of days later, my boss, Mr. Ryan, called me into his office. He told me that he wanted GP to take over my project. I told him that the project was ready for him to see, that there was no more work to be done on it, but he was insistent that she be a part of it. "But Mr. Ryan," I said, "the project is complete." "She has some experience at the head office in London, which could be invaluable to the project," he said. He then told me that I could continue to work on it with her if I liked, but that she had final say on the completed project. I was shocked to hear this news, as I had worked diligently on the project the past 6 months, and Mr. Ryan was always very supportive of my work. I could only think that he was getting some kind of pressure from the head office in London to hire her. Later that week, she came to see me at one of my classes, and she thanked me for introducing her to my boyfriend. She then proceeded to tell me that she would be editing his upcoming film in the winter. "Paul is everything as you described him to be, Charlotte. He's kind, sweet, smart, and also very handsome." I looked right into her eyes as she was describing him to me, and I realized that she had been with him. I stormed down the hallway in tears and locked myself in one of the classrooms. She tried to follow. "Stay away from me," I said. I realized that I would have to pretend to be her friend if I was to present my project to the company with her. However, all I could think of at this point was how deceived I'd been by both her and Paul, and how accurate my mother's maternal instincts were about her. My heart was broken. I didn't know what I would say to Paul at this point. However, I knew that I would have to deceive GB in the same way that she had deceived me. I needed to continue working with her to make sure that the company knew that this was my project, not hers.
I am from green bologna and Wonder Bread. I am from cornbread and spaghetti. I'm from nature and cinder block houses. I'm from drunkards and teetotalers. I'm from Catholic masses in Latin and Southern Baptist Bible thumpers. I'm from cold silence and loud family dinners.
Hi, I'm Alan Bernstein. This is Life Guarded. One summer when I met this beautiful girl, before we said anything, she was all like, "You are cool, but we can't." I'm working at the beachfront Sheraton. I wash pots at night. But a job is a job in 19. Us dishwashers were not allowed to use the pool. Like that mattered to me. One day I walk through and I see this Barbie up in the lifeguard chair. Here's this real girl for me. Right then I knew this could be something wild. So different from all the one-night stands I was having. You know, that was easy to forget the shame of it all. As soon as one was over, it was time for the next. I mean, 2 days in a row with the same person was a long-term relationship. I stopped short on the pool deck. She was dangling her feet in the air. She had these full cheeks and a slight overbite. She looked like a fleshed-out Rooney Mara. From a foul shot away, I caught her eye. She looked down and I said, "Hi." She said, "Hello. How's it going?" I knew she liked me, and I wasn't going to say how great the weather is. "I'm working and can't really talk here." "Well, would you like to go to dinner one night?" "I don't have time. I work almost every day, and then I go study at night." Can't really talk. Almost every day. I feel I've got some wiggle room here. She was the kind of girl I'd like to have fun with for a long time, like an inch or two shorter than me. Long brown hair and eyes the color of the ocean right behind her. I remember her in this sheer pink bikini. In reality, she wore the standard swim team one-piece. Fine with me. We didn't have any long romance together. Here was this beautiful, intelligent beauty keeping me at arm's length without being hurtful. That was maybe the strangest thing of all. She kept her guard up while I hung around. She didn't diss me. She was saving it all for one velvet night of love. I don't remember us humoring each other much, telling jokes or anything. You know, I tried, but she didn't need it. The night we spent together was the exception. She finally laughed and had fun with me. And then the Lower guard went right back up to full mast. A few days later, we're sitting around the cool house on the bay she rented with her friends. It's about 7 at night. They're all reading. What was I even doing there? I say to her, "You want to go for a walk?" She says, "No, I told you I don't have time." I almost cried. And then I say in front of everybody, "Well, it sure would be nice if I sleep with you tonight and we make love again." A few eyebrows go up and then drift back down to the books. "Alan, you never know why that happens or if it'll happen again." Whoa, what was this hippie philosophy coming out of her? I guess I could have said something like, "Well, it was nice having carnal knowledge of you," and left. You know, I'm surprised she didn't say something like, "Alan, can you take off for now? We need to study." She just went back to reading.
I'm from a city of no boundaries. I'm from a lost and found, all in the past and in my present. I'm from bright lights, energy, and surprise. I'm from a deep well of loneliness. I'm from a place that only I am from.
I'm Joan Pine, and I am from Beverly Hills. I am from Beverly Hills with shoes costing hundreds of dollars and handbags costing thousands. I am from Louis Vuitton on Rodeo Drive and from thrift shops on La Brea. I am from the 7 palm trees that I see out of my picture window. The one closest to me I call George. I am from the oh dear. I am from the school of I will buy you what I think is best for you, even if it's not what you want. I am from hearing, don't wear sweat socks. Your feet will sweat. I am from a box of paints that I gave to my father when he was in his 70s, to the 80 paintings he completed before he died. I am from the family picture albums that my parents kept under the couch in Florida. I am from Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, beginning in a community that has spread to the 4 corners of the world.
This is called Look Back Time. Did you know that the patron saint of hernia sufferers is Saint Conrad? I bet you didn't. My name is Conrad ROMO, named after my dad. He didn't know that thing about the patron saint of hernia sufferers either. According to the site, How Many of Me? There are 24,559 people in the U.S. with the last name ROMO, and there are 36,318 people with the first name Conrad. I know I'm not much, but as the saying goes, I'm all I think about, and this is but one creation story. I'm second-generation Los Angelean, grew up on the other side of the tracks from Dodger Stadium. My old man was born here too, but during the Repatriation Act in the 30s, he and his family had moved to Mexico, where he lived until after World War II. Scholars have estimated that the deportations during the Depression sent between 500,000 and 2 million Mexicans, mostly U.S. citizens and legal residents, to Mexico. Crossing the border back to California was a painful and difficult process. But eventually, he and a brother made it to L.A. with the name of a distant relative and an address scribbled on a piece of paper. The address or the spelling or the handwriting was off and led to a lot of frustrated searching all over the city. Finally, they found themselves downtown at the corner of First and Hope. They saw another brown-skinned man and thought, why not ask him if he happened to know who they were looking for? And miraculously, he did. One thing led to another, and they found work at the Southern Pacific Railroad, and they stayed on the job for the next 35 years. First and Hope has a nice ring to it, right? By the way, as mentioned earlier, my last name, Romo, is coincidentally St. Toribio Romo is a patron saint of border crossers or those undertaking perilous journeys. So a couple of years later, Dad met Evangelina outside. Dad met a girl named Evangelina outside St. Conrad's Mission near Elysian Park. He introduced himself, and she got pissed at him, thinking he was being disrespectful when he said his name was Conrad. But they got past that, and after a time were married. Mom always had a thing about the ocean, and one day while pregnant with me, she had an urge to see the sea. Dad had a better idea and instead took her to Lincoln Heights, to Lincoln Park in East LA with a man-made lake. Mom scowled, and Dad said, "Water's water." She was mad as hell and told him to take her to the hospital right away. He did, and while standing at the reception desk filling out paperwork at the White Memorial Hospital in Boyle Heights, the doctor came out to say that I had been born that quick. I kind of like the idea that out of a place of anger, her boiling water broke and out I popped. Mom wanted to name me Wolfgang, but Dad talked her out of it. By the way, the name Conrad means bold or brave counsel. They settled on AVIYAH Street behind the home of her parents where she was born, and in the back house at the age of 60, she died. On AVIYAH Street, I remember the aroma of sourdough bread from Foy Bakery wafting across the wide open field beyond our home. And I remember the constant sounds from the railroad yards. At the bottom of the street were a couple of factories, then San Fernando Road, the wide railroad yards, the LA River, and then Frogtown. Mom told me when I was a kid that any railroad activity going north or south had to pass through those yards. Years ago, I read the autobiography of Charlie Chaplin, and there was a small reference of riding a train from LA to San Francisco. And when I saw that, I smiled knowing that the great tramp had passed through my neighborhood, Cypress Park. Did he look through a window and return a wave to some passing kid? By the way, AVIYAH Street, in case you're wondering, is Latin, generally a girl's name meaning from the seashore. Look-back time is a term referring to the time elapsed between when we detect the light here on Earth and when it was originally emitted by the source. Seeing the light of the stars that have traveled millions of years, stars that have exploded and are long gone, I'm aware that every time I look up, I'm actually looking back at the past. I don't actually know what happened in the past. There are stories, opinions, and memories of it, but I can't escape the illumination of the past like we can't escape primeval starlight. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joan Pine, and I'm going to read about Bubby and Zadie. These are the names given to Jewish grandparents with extra love and normally with a big hug and kiss. These are my grandparents that I fondly remember as Bubby and Zadie, but their real names were Abraham and Rebecca. However, as they became more and more Americanized, They were just Abby and Becky. They didn't know the language. They didn't know the customs. And yet, they survived daily. She would buy live chickens, wring their necks, pluck off their feathers, season them with plenty of garlic and salt, peel vegetables and potatoes, bake them in the coal stove, and magically dinner would appear. And the Iceman really did cometh, with a big block of ice for the icebox. I was there. Once Bubby's hand had a run-in with a machine, and it chopped off 3 of the tops of her fingers. When I asked her what happened to your fingers, she answered plainly, "That's from working my fingers to the bone." They were ordinary people. They came from Europe. They came through Ellis Island. "What are your names?" the clerk asked my Zadie. He replied, "Abraham Bluestein." "Well," said the clerk, "we will have to give you an American name. You are now Abraham Weinstein." Someone directed them to Pennsylvania, and they settled in a little town 12 miles out of Scranton. They were the only Jews. They had 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. All 3 brothers served in the army, and all 3 came home. Bubby put a flag on the outside door with 3 stars on it. She was very proud, like the other parents with sons away at war. And after that, life went on. All 6 children left the nest, all got married, and all had children. And most of their children had children. It only took a few generations to have a grand total of 45 children. But they produced a neurosurgeon, 2 psychiatrists, 2 teachers, 1 real estate agent. Another was a high school principal, and his brother was city comptroller. There is also a TV personality, an artist, a contractor, a designer with a famous clothing line, a writer, an acupuncturist, and a paramedic. I am the writer, and this is my story about one immigrant family, how they prospered in America, and how America prospered from them.
I'm from the other side of the tracks. I'm from tamale makers. I'm from magical thinkers. I'm from loud yellers. I'm from a place of loquat avocado and cypress trees. I'm from the valley of flanged squeals and sourdough bread. I'm from elbow grease, hustle, and gristle. I'm from too much television, books and books and books. I'm from shut up, stupid.
My name is Mark Mantell, and this was my life as a 5-year-old. I don't think I had any sort of personality when I was little. I mean, what would have been the point? It didn't bother me. As a matter of fact, it hadn't even occurred to me that I didn't know or relate to kids my own age. Because you see, life could be tough for a 5-year-old in Brooklyn, especially one with a sense of responsibility. I mean, I had a very active social life. If it wasn't for me, who would see to it that my grandmother Lottie would get to go to the movies? It was up to me to make sure that she didn't have to be alone on these artistic ventures. She needed me for company and strength and this was an important position to uphold. Since both my parents went off to work, it was up to me to keep my grandmother busy during the days. Our time together was spent exclusively with countless trips to libraries and museums and double bills at every movie theater we could get into. I knew that Lottie loved musicals, so it was important that we would attend as many as possible. By the age of 5, I had viewed every Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, and Rita Hayworth movie at least 5 times. And if it was very hot or a very rainy day, we would sit through the movies all over again. And then on the long train ride home, we'd discuss everything about the musical that we had just seen together. My grandmother was blonde and beautiful, and sometimes she looked like the dancing actress Ginger Rogers. She was loving, soft-spoken, didn't drink, didn't smoke, could never tell a lie. And even though sometimes she was surrounded by people who cared about her, I knew deep down she was alone. She was very lonely. That is, until the day she met her very best new friend, Mr. Jesus Christ! And if sometimes I thought that a musical movie was unreal or maybe too theatrical, well, none of this compared to the overwhelming presentation of a gospel revival meeting that I attended with my grandmother Lottie in Harlem. Can you imagine a middle-aged woman with her 5-year-old totally welcomed and singing and shouting and dancing and clapping out loud within a sea of glorious energy? And in this church, this musical wasn't a movie, and we were part of it, and it was live. But if I was slightly confused, it was because of my parents' negative reaction with regard to my grandmother's journey toward salvation. Oh, they didn't care that she was singing and dancing uptown in some gospel revival meeting in Harlem. No, they were just upset that she would take me to such an event. And not because we were Jewish. No, they feared the danger in the trip getting to the place. You see, you had to take the BMT subway line from Brooklyn all the way into New York, 42nd Street Station, and then you had to change trains, and you had to get on the Uptown West Side IRT line, and those trains had dangerous juvenile delinquents. And to prove this point, a new musical had been written, and it opened on Broadway, and it was all about dangerous teenage gangs. West Side Story. So, naturally, my grandmother took note. She understood. End of discussion. Story would never be brought up again. I would never get to be baptized. And my grandmother would continue being lonely and alone. And she would have to travel from one end of the world in Brooklyn, all alone, to the other end of the world in Harlem. But I did pray, and I did hope that Mr. Jesus would keep my grandmother company on that long train ride. Well, at least on the IRT line. Thank you.